Mystery of Americans' dark secret they never thought you. In every nation's history, there are stories proudly told and others carefully buried. America, often seen as a symbol of freedom, opportunity, and progress, is no exception. But behind the grand speeches, the patriotic imagery, and the carefully curated narratives lies a question that almost no one is.
Ever wondered where you really come from? Not the stories, but the science. On this channel, we decode real DNA, uncover lost ancestries, and bring ancient genomes to life through cinematic storytelling. If that excites you, subscribe for weekly insights. Like the video to support science-based history, and drop a comment. Your questions help guide what we explore next.
Begin to feel unquestionable. But history does not operate on feelings. History operates on facts, patterns, and consequences. And sometimes the truth is not hidden because it is unknown, but because it is inconvenient. There exists a shadowed narrative beneath America's polished image, a narrative that connects decisions made centuries ago to realities we live with today. A narrative that reveals how power was gained, how it was protected, and how uncomfortable truths were quietly erased from public memory. This is not a story of conspiracy theories or exaggerated myths. This is a story rooted in documented events, ignored records, and voices that were deliberately silenced. The most effective secrets are not the ones locked away in classified vaults. They are the ones hidden in plain sight, normalized until no one thinks to question them. Over time, they become invisible, accepted, forgotten. But forgetting does not erase consequences. America's darkest secret is not a single event. It is a system of actions, choices, and omissions that shaped the nation's identity while contradicting the very ideals it claimed to uphold. It is a secret built slowly, protected fiercely, and justified repeatedly until generations grew up believing the result was destiny rather than design. The mystery is not whether this secret exists. The mystery is how so many people were taught to look away. To understand it, we must strip away emotion, patriotism, and fear. We must look not at what America says about itself, but at what it has done and why. We must examine the origins of its power, the price paid by those excluded from its promises, and the narratives rewritten to make history more comfortable. This journey will offer no easy answers. It will raise uncomfortable questions, and it will challenge ideas many were taught never to doubt. Because once you see the full picture, you can never unsee it. And that is precisely why this story is rarely told. The foundation built in shadow. To uncover America's darkest secret, you cannot begin with modern headlines or recent controversies. You must go back, far earlier, before the skyscrapers, before the global influence, before the myth was complete. You must go back to the foundation. America was not born innocent. The land that would become the United States was not discovered in the heroic sense often portrayed. It was inhabited. Cultures existed, systems thrived, and civilizations adapted to the land for thousands of years. Yet this reality conflicted with the ambitions of empire. So a different story was told, one where the land was empty, untamed, waiting to be claimed. That story made conquest feel like destiny. From the very beginning, power in America was built through exclusion. Freedom was declared universal, yet carefully defined. Equality was proclaimed, yet selectively applied. These contradictions were not accidents. They were deliberate compromises designed to protect wealth, land, and control. The founding documents are celebrated as revolutionary, and in many ways they were, but they were also incomplete. They spoke of liberty while allowing human beings to be owned. They championed representation while excluding women, indigenous peoples, and the poor. The nation's moral conflict was embedded into its legal DNA. This contradiction became America's original secret, the ability to preach freedom while practicing domination. Expansion was framed as progress, resistance was framed as savagery. Entire populations were displaced, erased, or absorbed into footnotes of history books. Treaties were signed, broken, and forgotten. Each broken promise was justified as necessary for growth, security, or prosperity. And the story worked. By controlling the narrative, America learned an essential lesson early on. Power is easier to maintain when the past is simplified. Complex truths create doubt. Doubt creates resistance, so history was streamlined into symbols and slogans. Heroes were elevated, victims were minimized. This foundation shaped everything that followed. Economic systems were constructed on forced labor. Political power concentrated in the hands of those who already held land and influence. Laws evolved to protect the structure, not dismantle it. Over time, these systems became normalized. Children learned a version of history that celebrated triumph while skipping tragedy. Generations inherited benefits without ever being taught the full cost. And the cost was immense. America's rise was not inevitable. It was engineered through calculated decisions that prioritized power over principle. The darker truth is not that mistakes were made, it's that those mistakes were profitable. And when injustice becomes profitable, it doesn't disappear, it adapts. By the time the nation began calling itself a beacon of hope, the shadow had already grown too large to ignore. But instead of confronting it, America learned to hide it behind symbols of unity and exceptionalism. The foundation was set, the secret was secured, and the consequences were only beginning.
The silence that shaped generations. Secrets do not survive by accident. They survive because silence is taught, rewarded, and enforced. America's darkest truth did not remain hidden simply because people didn't know. It remained hidden because knowing came with consequences. As the nation grew, so did the need to control its image. Education became one of the most powerful tools. What was included in textbooks mattered just as much as what was left out. Stories of victory were expanded. Stories of exploitation were condensed or erased. Complex events were reduced to simple morals, and uncomfortable realities were reframed as unfortunate but necessary steps toward greatness. Over time, this selective storytelling became tradition. Children were not taught to question the gaps. They were taught to memorize dates, names, and victories. The emotional weight of history, the pain, the resistance, the voices that challenged power, was stripped away. What remained was a version of the past that felt clean, heroic, and complete. But it wasn't complete. Media played its role as well. Films, television, and literature reinforced the same narrative. America was portrayed as the rescuer, the defender, the moral authority. When darker chapters appeared, they were softened, individualized, or resolved quickly, never framed as systemic or ongoing.
The result was a nation that believed its flaws were temporary and its virtues permanent. Those who challenged this narrative were often dismissed, marginalized, or labeled as unpatriotic. Questioning history was equated with attacking identity. Criticism was reframed as hatred. And slowly, a powerful psychological barrier formed. To love America meant not looking too closely at its past. This was not enforced by law alone, it was enforced socially. People learned which conversations were safe and which were not, which questions would be met with discomfort, which truths would be ignored at family tables, in classrooms, and in public discourse. Silence became normal, silence became polite, silence became patriotic, and silence is powerful. It allows systems to continue without scrutiny. It allows inequality to feel natural rather than constructed. It allows people to benefit from injustice without ever feeling responsible for it. The most dangerous part of this silence was that it wasn't experienced as oppression. It felt like unity, like pride, like stability. Generations grew up believing that the country's success was proof of its righteousness, that those who struggled simply failed to work hard enough, that the past had been resolved, corrected, and closed. But unresolved history does not disappear, it resurfaces. The silence did not erase the damage, it only delayed the reckoning. And as time passed, the gap between the story America told itself and the reality many lived grew wider. The secret endured not because no one spoke, but because too few were willing to listen. And the longer the silence lasted, the more fragile the myth became. The consequences of forgotten truths. The danger of forgetting history is not merely academic, it is lived. The effects of a country's refusal to confront its dark truths are not confined to textbooks. They shape policies, relationships, and, most crucially, the lives of those who are affected by the silence. For those who have been excluded, erased, or oppressed, the consequences of this historical amnesia are not abstract. They are personal, they are economic, they are social, and they are long-lasting. In the early years of the 20th century, while the nation's political elite reaped the benefits of industrialization, entire communities lived with the scars of systemic exclusion. African Americans were forced to navigate the legacy of slavery and segregation. Native Americans struggled to preserve their culture and lands, even as their histories were rewritten or forgotten. Immigrants, particularly from non-European nations, faced discrimination, their contributions to the nation minimized or ignored. Each group lived with the impact of policies and decisions made by a system that was built on the foundation of inequality. But the nation, in its drive for unity and exceptionalism, saw these disparities as anomalies rather than symptoms of a larger issue. To confront the issue of inequality meant acknowledging that the system itself was flawed, a truth few were ready to admit. The social and economic structures that were forged during the early years did not disappear with the Civil War or the Civil Rights Movement. They morphed, adapted, and persisted in ways that were more subtle, but no less harmful. Housing policies discriminated against Black Americans through redlining. The criminal justice system, while never overtly acknowledging it, continued to disproportionately target people of color. Education systems remained unequal, ensuring that the opportunities afforded to certain groups remained out of reach for others. And still, the myth persisted, that America was the land of opportunity for all. The myth held that anyone, regardless of background, could achieve success if they simply worked hard enough. But the reality was far different. In many ways, the silence around America's dark secret wasn't just about historical denial. It was about actively maintaining a system that benefited some while disenfranchising others. It was about preserving a status quo that ensured power and wealth stayed in the hands of those who had long been in control. It was about perpetuating a vision of America that ignored the struggles of those who were systematically oppressed. But the most insidious consequence of this silence was the normalization of inequality. When a society stops questioning the foundations of its own success, it accepts a warped version of progress. Generations grow up believing that the structures they inherit are fair, that the systems in place are just. But for millions, the reality is far from just. And as inequality became ingrained, the story of American greatness grew more difficult to believe.
The voices that refused to be silenced. Even in the darkest moments of history, there are always voices that rise above the silence. There are always individuals and movements that refuse to accept the stories told by the powerful few. These voices, often ignored or ridiculed in their time, have played a crucial role in exposing America's hidden truths. They are the ones who challenge the myth of a flawless, exceptional nation. They are the ones who demand that the nation confront its darkest secrets. From the very beginning of the American experiment, those who were excluded from the promises of freedom and equality made their voices heard. They fought not just for their own rights, but for the rights of future generations. In the 19th century, enslaved people who had been denied their humanity fought for their freedom. Abolitionists such as Frederick Douglass, Harriet Tubman, and Sojourner Truth exposed the moral and economic rot at the heart of slavery. Their activism and writings forced the nation to reckon, albeit slowly and painfully, with the horrors of the institution. But even as slavery was abolished, the system of racial injustice remained entrenched, and the struggle for equality continued. In the 20th century, the civil rights movement brought these injustices to the forefront once again. Leaders like Martin Luther King Jr., Rosa Parks, Malcolm X, and countless others confronted the brutal reality of segregation, disenfranchisement, and systemic racism. They were met with violence, resistance, and disdain by those in power, yet their courage and determination forced the nation to reconsider its identity. The Civil Rights Act of 1964 and the Voting Rights Act of 1965 marked monumental victories, but the work was far from over. At the same time, indigenous peoples continued to resist the erasure of their cultures and lands. From the early days of colonization to the forced relocations of the 19th century, Native Americans faced a relentless campaign to remove them from the land and suppress their identities. Yet throughout history, they fought back. From the occupation of Alcatraz in the 1960s to the Standing Rock protests against the Dakota Access Pipeline in 2016. These movements, though often marginalized in mainstream discourse, remain a testament to the resilience and strength of Native peoples. Women, too, have always fought for their rightful place in America's story. From the suffragists of the late 19th and early 20th centuries to the feminist movements of the 1960s and 70s to the continued fight for gender equality today, women have pushed against the boundaries that sought to confine them. The fight for reproductive rights, equal pay, and an end to gender-based violence are ongoing struggles, but they are struggles shaped by the voices of those who refused to be silenced. The LGBTQ+ community, too, has had its share of resistance against a society that once criminalized its very existence. From the Stonewall riots of 1969 to the fight for marriage equality to the ongoing battle for transgender rights, the LGBTQ+ community has fought for visibility, acceptance, and basic human dignity. Their efforts have changed the social and legal landscape in profound ways, but the journey is far from complete.
These voices from every corner of American society have been essential in revealing the secret that America has tried to hide for so long, that its greatness was built on the backs of the oppressed, and that its promises of freedom and equality were never meant for all. These movements, while not always successful in their immediate goals, have exposed the structural inequalities that are woven into the fabric of the nation. But the work of truth-telling has never been easy, nor has it been universally accepted. Those who challenge the dominant narrative are often labeled as troublemakers or unpatriotic. The media, politicians, and those in power frequently attempt to discredit them, dismiss their struggles, and even erase their contributions from the historical record. But despite these efforts, these voices continue to speak truth to power. Today, the fight for justice and equality continues as the shadow of America's dark secret looms large over the present. But it is through the courage of these voices, the abolitionists, the civil rights leaders, the feminists, the LGBTQ+ activists, the indigenous advocates, that we are slowly but surely uncovering the hidden history of America. These are the people who refuse to let the nation forget its true past, and through their resistance, they force us all to confront the reality of a nation that has yet to fully reckon with its own history. The truth comes to light. As the years go by, more and more Americans are beginning to confront the truth that has long been buried in silence. The voices of resistance that once seemed isolated are now amplified by social movements, technology, and a growing public awareness of the need for change. The hidden narrative of America's dark secret is coming to light, and it's sparking a reckoning that can no longer be ignored. The rise of social media has been a game changer in this struggle. Platforms that once served as spaces for entertainment have transformed into powerful tools for advocacy and activism. The hashtag Black Lives Matter movement, born from the anger and frustration of families who lost loved ones to police violence, quickly grew into an international movement. It illuminated the persistent racial disparities in the criminal justice system, and with it, a wider conversation about systemic racism in every facet of American life. Similarly, the Me Too movement has shined a spotlight on the epidemic of sexual harassment and assault, forcing the nation to reckon with the ways in which power, privilege, and gender intersect in dangerous and often overlooked ways. The bravery of survivors has ignited changes in legislation, corporate policies, and societal attitudes, but it has also revealed a painful truth about the exploitation and abuse that have been normalized for generations. The struggle for indigenous rights has also gained renewed attention. From the ongoing battle for land rights to the fight against environmental degradation, indigenous activists are reclaiming their narratives and pushing back against centuries of erasure. The worldwide response to the Standing Rock protests in 2016 was just one example of how these voices are gaining strength, challenging a nation to acknowledge the ongoing harms committed against Native peoples and their land. In the political realm, the election of the first Black president, Barack Obama, marked a historic moment for the country, but it also laid bare the deep divides that still exist. Despite his success, Obama's presidency was met with fierce opposition, much of it rooted in racial resentment. His time in office revealed the country's lingering struggles with racial and economic inequality, and his legacy continues to be debated as America grapples with what true equality looks like. The truth of America's dark secret is not just about looking back, it's about shaping the future. The fight for racial justice, gender equality, LGBTQ+ rights, and indigenous sovereignty is ongoing, but the power of truth-telling, activism and the collective will to address the nation's past misdeeds is undeniable. As these truths come to light, the question becomes not whether the past will be acknowledged, but how the nation will move forward. The reckoning has begun. It is uncomfortable, messy, and long overdue, but it is also essential. For in facing its darkest secrets, America has the opportunity to heal, to grow, and to live up to the ideals it has so often claimed but rarely realized. The question now is whether the nation will embrace this truth or continue to hide from it.